My first Chief Petty Officer was Chief Linda Baumberger, and was stationed at VQ3, Barbers Point, Hawaii. I checked on board as a YNSA, and I'm from the great state of Illinois. So at VQ3 Barbers Point, there was about 25 very junior sailors, and this was, as you know, we're all away from home from the States because it's overseas, or OCONUS. So I remember her as being kind of like a mother figure, a disciplinarian sometimes, because when we needed a kick in the butt, she gave us a kick in the butt. She was there for, deaths in the family, and she was there to invite us over for Thanksgiving. So she was a very loving, genuine, open Chief Petty Officer who, I will tell you today, a lot of the attributes that I've learned from her, because you always learn from your first chief, the goods and the bads, but mostly goods from her. So yeah, Linda Baumberger, great lady. Oh my God. When I came in back in 1985, totally different environment. Liquid lunches was in, being popped on a urinalysis really wasn't, hey, one and done, zero tolerance kind of thing. So that still was kind of going on. We've grown as a Navy, and we're more mature as a Navy with the programs that's come online. But more importantly, we understand, taking care of that sailor and to grow that sailor to be our relief, right? And as you leave the Navy, you want to make sure the Navy's in good hands. So I just think as a Navy in a whole, we're maturing. In the days of old, like my dad's Korean War days is not the days of, my Navy. So I think we're learning from our mistakes, and we're getting better, and we understand to take care of that sailor and to train that junior officer. Yeah, kind of a funny story. When I made it in 1995, we really didn't talk about training the junior officer. So not too long ago, I was at the Naval Safety Center, and we have our loop, the Admiral's Aide. And one of the training things for him was I was up at D.C. at the Pentagon, and I was going to see McPon Stevens. And I said, come on, LT, come with me. And he had no idea where I was going, right? So I walked into McPon's office, knocked on the door, and I had the LT with me, the loop with me. And I said, hey, McPon, this is the loop for the Admiral. And I said, is it okay if I bring him in? I said, it's going to be a training experience today. So actually, the lieutenant sat down for an hour conversation on just kind of how the safety center's doing, what we're doing big picture for the Navy and the Marines. And he got 1 hour with the McPon, and that truly was invaluable to him. So that's probably the funniest story with training a junior officer. Just kind of snagged him up and took him with me as I went in and talked to McPon Stevens. So he'll never forget it. His dad is a retired captain, and his dad is like, oh my God, I never got to meet a McPon. So good story for him. We always say making chief is a rebirth experience, right? We're being reborn, and the whole uniform change and pinning on the anchor. And when I got pinned, it wasn't open to everybody, so it was only chiefs and officers like Mustangs, or any officer who was prior chiefs, right? That was a prior chief. So it was a very closed ceremony. I think the day that it really hit me was when I walked out of the hangar bay, because I was on board Nimitz when I made it, and I walked down to the mess decks, walking to the chief's mess, and one of the sailors stopped and said, hey, Chief, and I kind of kept walking, and my story's probably just like everybody else's. You kind of keep walking, and they're like, hey, Chief Whitman, and I said, and I kind of turned around, and I said, oh, hey, hi, how you doing? And that's when it hit me, ask the chief or talk to the chief, and that's when it really hit me, when they put Chief Whitman together. It's been great. It's awesome. And it's unbelievable what we have as a brotherhood and sisterhood in the Chief's Mess. I think a really good Chief's Mess understands the mission and the goal, but not only that, but they understand that mission or that goal cannot be achieved without the sailors. So they have to understand the two aspects of it, right? There's a saying out there called mission first, sailors always. That Chief's Mess has to understand that. And the chiefs in the Chief's Mess also have to understand that if that sailor's down in the engine room turning that wrench, there should be a chief right down there with him or her. Because if that sailor's staying late, that chief should be right there staying late to make sure the job is done correctly, and that sailor is trained. right? And when Liberty Call goes down, it's great. Chiefs usually can be the first ones off the ship, right? But 9 times out of 10, that great chief is the one that stays back to make sure their sailors get off the ship first, right? And they're taken care of, and they're ready to go on Liberty. And then he or she, the chief, can sit back and say, okay, now it's time for me to go. Because in all actuality, we can leave the ship as soon as we pull in, Liberty Call goes down. That's the difference between a good chief and a great chief globally. And by that, the 30,000 sailors, they represent, that chief represents the whole mess, the mess as a whole. And it's pretty daunting, as you sit there and you're representing the chief's mess. And it's just not Surfland's chief's mess. It's the MCPON's chief's mess, right? Not only that, but also to, take care of that sailor. And I always go back to taking care of that sailor, because if that sailor knows that you take care of them, they'll take care of you. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about you. It's about you taking care of that sailor now. And last but not least, to lean on the mess, because you particularly as a chief don't know everything, but someone in that mess, we've been around, enough of us have been around long enough to have been there, done that, seen that, or at least heard it, and to rely on their brothers and sisters for the answer, right? And they're never alone. You can go to Alaska, and there's going to be an old retired chief there, and that retired chief, you pick up the phone, call him or her, they'll be there to help you. And that's the beauty about being a chief. We're all over, and even though when we do go home and we do retire, we're really not off the rolls. We do take care of each other as chiefs. I think my absolute favorite part about being a chief is being able to affect sailors' lives. And whether it be, helping that sailor advance even farther, or maybe bringing a sailor along and to counsel him or her because they're going down the wrong path. And not to give up on them. Because, nowadays it seems like it's one and done. You get one hiccup and, we just kind of want to kick you out of the Navy. With all PTS and ERB and all that crazy stuff that's going on. But the bottom line is to affect sailors, for the good, for the betterment of that sailor. And whether they stay in for the long haul or just get 4 good years out of them and make sure that they have a path for success when they get out of the Navy. So it's affecting sailors' lives. And I think what's said best, and Admiral Gumatau said it best, you've affected a sailor's life as you're walking down the street and you're on one side of the street, sidewalk, and across the street is your sailor. And is that sailor willing to take the time out to cross that street and yell at you and shake your hand? That's when you've affected sailors.